Hello, and welcome to Aero Innovations. I'm Aero, and I'll be your AI host. This will be my very first poker vlog, but I've got some exciting poker hands to go over with you today. A little bit about myself and what this channel will be about before we begin. I'm 45 years old, and I don't really want to compare myself to anyone in particular, or my playstyle to any notoriously played hands spelled with a Z by the way, but I'm not exactly a rampaging young Asian guy who has something to prove by three-barrel bluffing my entire stack in $1 million game with ace high. I mean, when's the last time you saw someone fold top set in a 2-5 game? That just doesn't happen, so we're going to try to avoid super risky, ultra-high variance moves. So while I may not be able to get your blood pumping or tickle your nibs, I do, however, sport one of the most consistent 2-5 Texas Hold'em win ratios in Las Vegas, and I'm probably in the top 10 for strictly 2-5 and below profitability as well. So here on my channel, we're going to try to provide education as well as entertainment. I begin the night, as I do almost every night, playing 2-5 no limit Texas Hold'em at the Wynn Encore in Las Vegas. I play almost strictly 2-5 and almost strictly at the Wynn Encore. I played other limits in my past, ranging all the way up to 10-25, and at other casinos all around Las Vegas as well as all over California. But for now, I've chosen the Wynn to be my home base. They have a much higher standard when it comes to poker dealers as well as poker management. The poker room is well lit and spacious, and the poker players can get their parking validated as well. Unlike other establishments, there's no expiration to the comps you earn here. I begin the night at 2:05 in the morning. I buy in for 1,500, which is 300 big blinds. A few minutes into the session, I look down at pocket Okay, let's just clear the elephant in the room now and call them for what they are. These are jiggities. Shout out to Brad Owen. I don't want to play favorites, but if I had a favorite poker vlogger, shh, it's you, Brad, it's you. I don't know how my table plays yet, so I like to raise a bit bigger with my premium hands when I first sit down to a table. I open for 25 under the gun. I only get one caller, who apparently doesn't like Brad Owen, so I'm going to try to punish him for his audacity. The first card I see in the window is a jack, so in my head I'm hearing, money! But unfortunately, the rest of the flop rolls out, and the jack is accompanied by an ace and a king, all clubs. Not the most amazing flop in the world. I make another $25 continuation bet. The opponent folds quickly, and we move on. For this next hand, there's an early position raised to 20 by a tight player and one caller before I look down at pocket nines in middle position. I can choose to call here and try to win a bigger pot by flopping a 9, or I can 3-bet in position. Against a more conservative player, raising here might have been the more lucrative play, since they will most likely fold all of their holdings that don't completely smash the flop. Instead, I chose the more passive route and just called. Another player calls behind, and a very loose player calls in the small blind. We're going 5 ways to the flop in a $100 pot. The flop comes 7 high with 2 diamonds. Everyone checks to me with only one player behind yet to act. This is an extremely wet board, but I'm not positive I have the best hand yet. I could be drawing almost dead to a flop straight. The original raiser is pretty conservative, so he might have an overpair like 10s or jacks. However, checking here would be a big mistake, as any overcard would give 2 random overcard holdings, like Jack King or 10 Queen, the lead, which would normally fold to any bet here. I decide to bet $60 to see where I'm at. The player behind me calls, as well as the small blind. The turn is the 10 of clubs, so now there's 2 clubs as well as 2 diamonds on the board. Any diamond flush draw containing a 10 now also beats me. I'm not super happy with this board, but when the small blind checks to me, I can't exactly let the 2 players see a free river either. Let's hope they only have 1 pair holdings, straight draws or flush draws that don't contain a 10. I bet $125 into the pot of 280, with plans to snap fold if anyone raises. Instead, they both call, and we go to a river into an extremely bloated pot of $655, which comes a deuce of diamonds. Yay, because that's a card I wanted to see. Ace 3 makes a sneaky double gut shot, but more importantly, the front door flush gets there. The loose lady tanks for a while, deciding whether she wants to try to steal the pot or not, but ultimately checks. I check quickly. The guy behind me briefly checks his cards before throwing out a bet of $260. The lady quickly folds. Well, if you got it, you've got it. Am I right?
No! No!
No, not really. What am I beating here? Both players would have had to have been on the open-ended straight draw, or the guy's deciding to turn his one small pair into a bluff against 2 other players. I haven't been on this table very long, but I haven't seen him get out of line yet, so I reluctantly decide to fold. A few hands later, I open to 15 with 7-8 of diamonds under the gun and get 3 callers behind me. We're going 4 ways to a flop of Jack 4-5 with 2 diamonds. That's not a bad flop. I'm drawing to a flush as well as a sneaky invisible straight. I decide to lead with a small bet of 25 and only get one caller, the same guy who beat me in the last hand. Come on, 6! Let's get revenge on this guy and show him something stinky. Instead, the turn is an ace of hearts. This could potentially be an incredibly bad turn card for me if my opponent is drawing to the ace-high flush draw. Then I'd be down to 3 outs. Or it could be a great card for me if he's only holding a jack, as an ace is a much better card for me as the original raiser. I might be able to take this pot down without seeing a river. I bet 75. My opponent calls, and my plans of taking down this pot without a fight goes up into smoke, just like years of my hard earnings when I tried dabbling into stocks and crypto without an inkling as to what I was doing. I'm not sure if I even want a diamond at this point. Come on, 6! Revenge of the nerds, let's go! The river pairs the board with a 5, but at least it's a 5 of diamonds. I no longer need to pretend I have an ace because I actually have a flush now. There's no reason for me to bet here because I'm only going to get called or raised by a better hand, so I check. My opponent immediately bets out $205, which is really aggravating because it's on the larger side. He only has $350 behind, so I can't exactly try to rep a full house to get him off his hand. Seriously, bro? Did you seriously make 2 flushes on me in a row? I don't have it in me to fold 2 big hands in a row, so I'm forced to call. And of course, he shows ace-queen of diamonds. Whoa, wasn't expecting that. He really did have the ace-high flush draw, but more than that, he had a surprisingly good kicker. If he didn't 3-bet me with a hand that strong, he almost definitely had the flush the previous hand. I asked him if he did, in fact, make 2 flushes in a row against me, and he's nice enough to reply that he did indeed make a flush in the previous hand, but that he had a lot more going for him, like an open-ended straight as well. I'm glad I bet a bit on the smaller side in that hand, because there's no way I was getting him off that monstrous draw. We're now an hour and 40 minutes into the session, but I'm already down $575. About 30 minutes later, there's a middle position raised to 15, when I look down at some luscious ladies. Finally, a premium hand. No offense to jiggities, but I'd rather smile down at some luscious ladies any day of the week. More fun with the hoes than Brad with the bros. I 3-bet to 50. Big blind cold calls, and the original raiser tags along as well. We're going 3 ways to a flop of 5 queen king with 2 hearts. Both players check to me. I flip in a black Jimmy Dean as if I don't really care about this board, as if it didn't just hit me like a Jean-Claude Van Damme splits kick to the face. With how my night has been going so far, that turn better not be another heart. Thankfully, it's a jack of spades. So now there's 2 hearts and 2 spades on the board. The only hand that realistically beats me is ace-10 of hearts. When both players check to me, I lay down the law and smash the $450 pot with a bet of $400. See, this is where a lot of beginners and intermediate players make one of the most common mistakes. They flop a monstrous hand, like middle set, and instead of betting appropriately, they bet tiny or even check to try to trap. I would have to say that bet sizing is likely one of the biggest problems for recreational players, along with starting hand selection. You might be shocked to hear this, but hands like King 10 and Jack Queen offsuit, I fold in any position other than the button in most cases. But back to the future. The big blind goes into the tank, long and hard. We're talking like constipation hard. He's staring daggers at me, trying to get a read. Bro, I'm a long-time pro. You're not getting anything out of me unless you stick it all in and then need help out with an Uber. He has roughly 600 or so in front of him. Several minutes pass by. Do you need to, take a break or something? If you just stick it all in, you can then take a step back from the table like Bill Perkins did at the lodge. Normally, I'd let players take their time, but this isn't exactly the biggest pot in the world for these stakes. Eventually, I call for time. When the floor comes over, he asks the dealer if the player has had enough time to act. The dealer doesn't seem too interested in the hand, so I interject and let the floor know that roughly 5 minutes has passed. So the floor lets the big blind know he has 30 seconds to act, instead of the usual full minute they give to players, which prompts him to fold quickly. So what happens next is slightly annoying, but at least somewhat amusing. The original raiser declares he needs time to think. Another player at the table jokingly comments he's already had over 5 minutes, and we all get a soft chuckle out of that. He says he has a really big hand, but he doesn't know what to do since I'm the original 3-better. He only has a stack of about $450 or so. I tell him I'm drawing to the nuts. I don't know what he has, but if I hit my card, I'll have the nuts. I mean, it's not technically a lie. Eventually, he shoves all in, and of course I call. I let him know that if I hit a queen, I'll make quads. Surprisingly, he shows pocket 5s for a smaller flop set. We were all shocked to see him tank so hard with such a strong hand, considering his small stack size. I mean, he barely had 100 big blinds to start the hand. If it were up to me, I would have gotten it all in on the flop with this hand and stack size. I mean, he's beating ace-king, king-queen, king-jack suited, and even pocket aces. He's only losing to pocket kings and pocket queens. With 100 big blinds, this would truly have been a if you've got it situation. We're now 2 hours into the session, and I'm finally up $265. For this hand, I moved to a different table where everyone's straddling. The button raises to 30 when I look down at 4-7 of spades in the straddle. To be honest, I should have just let this hand go. There's no point playing such a hand out of position. But this particular hand with this particular suit holds a soft spot for me, because it used to be my lucky hand, back when I believed in lucky hands, and won me my biggest pot in a 2-5 game with a $500 cap to buy in. I was second chip leader on the table with about 2,300 in front of me, with the chip leader having me slightly covered with roughly the same stack. I was drawing to a gut shot straight on a king-high board when I backed into trip 7s instead. When the original raiser continued betting small with like 20% pot-sized bets, I raised them to 400 on the river. He tanked for a while before shoving it all into my face. Back then, when I had a rather attractive studly face, I went deep into the tank. If I called here and was wrong, I'd only be down a single buy-in. But unfortunately, I could only buy back in for $500. There's no recovering from a loss this big at a game where there's only a max buy-in of 100 big blinds. I was only beating a bluff after all. I mean, I do have trips, but my opponent is going all in for 400 big blinds. Eventually, I trusted my read of the situation and made the right call, winning an almost 5K pot in a 2-5 poker game where the max buy-in was only $500. Back to the action at hand, I decide to defend my straddle. The flop comes king high with 2 spades. Not bad, I actually flopped a flush draw. This flop is better for my opponent's range, so I start with a check. He c-bets another $30 and I call. If the flop texture had been any different, like for instance 8 high with 2 spades, I would consider check raising. But for this sort of flop, there's no point bloating the pot out of position. The turn comes an insignificant deuce of clubs. Pretty sure that didn't help either player, so I check again. My opponent suddenly bets almost full pot for $115. Okay, this is where a lot of intermediate and recreational players make some big mistakes. They figure if I'm going to play this kind of hand and I flop a flush draw, I might as well continue and see it all the way, right? The problem is, you could be drawing completely dead here, or extremely slim. What if my opponent had 10 jack of spades, or any flush draw containing an 8? In the off chance I'm drawing live, what are the chances my opponent will pay me off if the flush does hit on the river? What if he only has like 10 jack offsuit, or has like ace queen and he can't pay off any bet? Those hands are good enough to bet in position, but they're not going to pay off a dime if the flush hits the river. A bunch of hands won't pay me on the river. In the 1 in 5 chance that I actually even make a flush, I decide to fold. For this next hand, the straddle is still on. There's one limper when the button raises to 50. I look down to ace-jack offsuit in the small blind. You could go either way here between folding and calling. Wait, Aero, are you seriously suggesting I fold ace-jack to a single raise? Well, the thing is, position means everything when you're playing with deep stacks. $50 is also a much larger than normal raise. Very occasionally, I'll mix in a large 3-bet here, but that's only if I'm on a table where most of the little piggies have made their houses out of straw, and are more likely to fold. In this case, I have a grudge against this particular player on the button, whom in a previous night 4-bet me with Jack Queen of Hearts, and ended up beating me out of $1,500 since his hand was completely disguised. For the sake of V for Vendetta, I decide to call here. The straddler and limper call too, so we're going 4 ways to the flop of 10 high, all clubs. Not feeling very amazing about my red ace-jack. But thankfully, everyone checks. The turn is an ace of hearts. Not bad, not bad. I'm fully expecting the button to bet this turn card, but when everyone checks to him, he checks it back. The river is another king of hearts. I decide to offer tickets to Value Town for anyone hoping to hitch a ride, for the low, low price of $50. Unfortunately, everyone folds and we move on. Another 15 minutes go by before I play my next significant hand. The usual straddle is on. I open to 25 with pocket 7s and the low jack when it folds to me. The hijack, button, and straddle all call. We go 4 ways to a flop of 2, 6, 8 with 2 spades. The straddle leads with a small bet of $30 into the $100 pot. I mean, he's the straddle, so he can have any 2 cards. Usually a small bet in this situation means he's trying to see if his random 8 or 6 is any good. I never want to call here with only 1 or 2 outs. Plus, for such a small bet, anyone could call with 9, 10, and really take away the few outs I might otherwise have had. So I pretend my hand is better than it actually is, and try to isolate with a raise to $125. The hijack puts in the call, which is alarming considering he just cold called a bet and a raise. I played with him many times over the past few years, but I don't actually know his name. He's a regular here and always wears a hat and tight-fitting shirts to show off his muscles. Real nice guy otherwise. I think he's known as the Flying Dutchman. No, wait, I think that's from SpongeBob. Or was his name French Bulldog? No, that can't be it. That name's already taken. Well, let's just call him Frenchie. So Frenchie calls and the Straddler calls. Frenchie must have a big draw, because he would have re-raised with a set or two pairs. The plan is to represent an overpair, or flop set, and get any random 8 to fold, assuming another 8 or spade doesn't hit. The turn is a better card than I could have imagined. It's a red 7. In fact, the only remaining 7 that isn't a spade. The only hand that realistically beats me is 9-10 of spades, or 4-5 for the sneaky double gut shot. When the straddle checks, I make a hearty bet of $350 into the pot of $475. Frenchie tanks for a full minute and a half. He will later reveal that he had the nut flush draw. If heads up, there's no decision to make, but he's afraid that if he calls, the straddler might shove all in for his stack of almost $1,200. Like any good player, he doesn't want to pay that high of a price for a draw with only one card to go. Frenchie decides to fold his hand and protect his $1,700 stack. Thank you, Frenchie. Thank you sincerely. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir? The straddler moves all in. I guess he must have heard I have 2 young kids and wants to help out with their expenses. I snap call, and you can hear his response along with some lovely français from our local Frenchman, especially when the river is a 5 of spades.
That's
not a good sign.
Fuck. Wow, I got it on this. I knew he's gonna go in. No good. Fuck.
The straddler is a young guy, looks between 21 to 23, and he actually flopped top 2. The problem he made is trying to trap with a hand that is extremely unlikely to improve, and yet strong enough that you're going to pay off if someone hits their cards, especially when he already got the exact response he wanted. He let out, got a raise, and got someone else to cold call. It's not like he flopped top set on an uncoordinated rainbow board. He should have smashed my raise with Thor's hammer to the tune of at least $400. That would have gotten me out quickly. Frenchie would have called, but then been forced to fold to a shove on the turn. Live and learn, my young friend. Live and learn. For my very last hand of the night, the straddle is still on. Under the gun opens to 30. There's one caller before I call in the big blind with ace-jack offsuit. Again, I'm not crazy about this hand out of position, especially when I'm getting such a great price to just flat call. The straddler comes along as well. We're going four-handed to a jack-high rainbow flop. I decide to lead for $75 into the pot of $120 to see where I'm at. A lot of pros don't suggest what they call donk betting, but it's a tool like any other. Tools are only as good as the person using them. If I were playing on a table with a super aggressive raiser, I might just keep checking and let them hang themselves. But on a board texture this dry and against players that seem to know what they're doing, I'd rather lead out. The straddler folds and the original raiser raises me to $210. The last player folds, leaving it just heads up. I tank for about 30 seconds before I decide to fold. Should I have called? Tell me how you would have played this hand differently. What do you think my opponent had? Please leave your comment down below. I was fortunate enough to play with this same player again the next day where he tells me what he had, but you'll have to wait until my next video to find out. I played for 3 hours and 45 minutes and cashed out up $1,709. Again, this is my very first vlog post ever, so be kind and please rewind. I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like and subscribe if you found this video entertaining or informative. I'm going to try to get out 2 to 3 new videos a week, so if this is the sort of video you like watching, hit that notification bell if you want to be informed when I have a new video. See you next time.